Alright, so the shifter that we made in the last video of this project is kind of terrible. There's just a couple things I don't like about this. I don't like how big this is. It's a little too tall. I kind of want to make this a little bit smaller. Make it so where it doesn't have so much play in here. Get rid of all the flex that this has. So yeah, there's just a couple things I want to fix on this and try to make this a lot better. So, to solve the issue of this flexing, I'm just going to add another pivot point right here. Yeah, this new shifter is a lot better. It's smaller, it's lighter. We got rid of the heavy flex that the previous setup had by adding another pivot point right here. You can see it's very stiff, which is perfect. Also, it has a lot less movement. You don't have to move it as far forward and back to shift gears. Here's actually the original one before we changed it. And here's the new one. Yeah, it is a lot better. So, I've been staring at this for probably like a day and a half by now, trying to figure out how to do that. Because, like I was saying in the last video of this project, I could simply just, because this secondary transmission is an H pattern, but because the transmission's sideways, I could simply just have a one-piece connection, connecting this, going up, bending up, connecting to that, but that would make it to where the H pattern is sideways. Now, I've really been trying to figure out, is that the end of the world? Or do I want to try and figure out a complicated linkage setup to try and make it to where it's a normal H pattern, to where it's not sideways? And I've been really trying to figure out, do I bother? Would it be the end of the world if it's sideways? Is it possible to do a simple linkage setup to where it's a normal H pattern? I'm really trying to stare at this, trying to figure out how to. The problem is I could do this. It's just going to be a lot of moving parts, a lot of complicated linkage going everywhere. I know what you guys are going to say about, oh, what about cables? I don't like cables. I I've tried those in the past, and there's so much friction. As soon as you have to do a bend in it, there's so much friction. I don't like cables. So that's why I like my linkage setup that I do. It's, you know, it's basically zero friction, and it's a simple way to do it for simple things. But with this, it's a little bit more complicated because of what I'm trying to do. I don't know. Would it be the end of the world if the H pattern is sideways? Not really, but it's more of a thing. The more vehicles that I build like this, the more I'm realizing how you kind of want something like this. I can't think of a nicer way to put it, but you kind of want to build something like this idiot-proof, basically where somebody that wants to drive this thing, I don't have to explain to them every single, like, oh, if you want to use this, it's this, but it's reversed. It's to go reverse, you have to do this, and it's just having to explain how to drive a vehicle is a little annoying for somebody that wants to just hop in and drive it. So having, you know, the best way to build a vehicle is to have it to where everything is self-explanatory. You know, you can look at it and basically kind of figure out, like, okay, secondary transmission, main transmission, simple stuff like that, and having to explain to people, oh, it's an H pattern, but it's sideways, so just do this to go into gears and not this. It's just something that, I don't know, it'd be nice if I could avoid that, but it may just have to be complicated. It may just have to be, you know, just a lot of moving parts if we want to do it. Or I could just make this very simple, just have one moving part and just have it sideways. Just make it simple and just bite the bullet of you shift into gears this way and this is neutral instead of this is neutral and this is the way to shift into gears. So I don't know. I've been staring at this for way too long, trying to figure it out. I don't know what to do. Look at that! It's actually working. Nice. Alright, so we got one of the directions done. Now we just gotta do the other direction. Check it out. Do y'all remember what this is off of? This is actually the first secondary transmission shifter that I built for the CBR 1000 project, and we ended up not going with this for very long. I ended up changing how that thing works, and I ended up putting this on a shelf, and it's been sitting there for probably over a year now, and it's actually perfect because it already has a shift knob with the engravings of reverse, first, second, third already in here, which is perfect for this project. So I'm going to cut this off and then tack this on our new shift lever. Check it out. I was able to figure it out. It did take me a little while to do this, but I eventually got it. I know it looks a little complicated, but I'm really glad that I did this because it works a lot better than any other setup that I could think of, and it's also easy to shift. So that's reverse, that's low range, that's medium range, that's high range, and that is neutral. It's easy to find the gears, it's easy to look at it and know that's in medium range, that's in high range. So yeah, I'm glad I did this. Also, every time I do a linkage setup like this, I always see comments of you guys asking why don't I do push-pull cables, and I've tried those in the past. I don't like them. They're a little bit fragile in my opinion. They're finicky. You always have to figure out the exact length that you need. You have to order those. You have to figure out what company has the right length you need, make sure they're strong enough. And then they always have weird connector. I've tried those in the past. I don't like them. And also, if you put a bend in one of those things, it just adds friction. So with this setup, if I did use a push-pull cable, with this direction, I would have had to do 1, 2, and then a full 180 bend to get it to work, and then that would have created just so much friction. I don't think it would have worked. So that's why I do this linkage setup. It's easier to build. It's not less complicated, but in my opinion, it's better. It's stronger. I mean, you're not gonna easily break this. You know, you can kind of beat on it, and it'll take it, which is why I like this setup. So anyway, now that this is done, now we need to figure out how we're doing the shifter for the 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive disconnect. Where we're putting that, how we're getting it to lock it, because we need to make it lock into place, so therefore it doesn't accidentally, you know, disengage or engage when we don't want it to, and how we're connecting it to here. So I'm not really sure if I should put it up here. This is kind of a decent spot for it, I guess. I just have to make sure that it's not in the way of this, not in the way of this, or this. It's going to be easy to reach. But the problem with this is, it's going to be really long, going from here to here, and it's going to have to go past here. I'm kind of liking this spot. It's not easy to reach, but it's a better spot for it. Something like that. You always have to make sure that it's not going to hit this. I don't know. This is kind of a little bit harder to reach, but it's a better spot for it. This is easy to reach, but it's not really that convenient. Right here. I'm not really sure where to put this. What about up here? Alright, check it out. The shifters are done, the levers are done. So I made this spring-loaded, and then I added this little piece of plate with these notches in here, so therefore it locks into place. So that's 4-wheel drive, that's 2-wheel drive, it's locks in place, and it's not going to accidentally, you know, move or anything. Now, I decided to also add these because I know I said that I was planning on putting paneling on top of this, but now that we added this and this and this, it would have been kind of a challenge to add a panel to the top of this. So that's why I added this. We'll put paneling on the sides as well as on the top. It kind of helps protect all this, and it just I think it looks nicer, and it also actually makes a nice spot to rest my arm, which is kind of cool. Also, adding these made it to where I had a spot to mount this, to weld this little piece of plate. Because originally I was thinking of just having a 1-inch piece of plate going from here up, over, and then back down, but then it's like, that's really hideous, and I'm like, is there a way to add tubing over here? And it's like, well, I could do this, and then I'll make it to where we can raise the paneling and protect all this stuff, so I think it turned out pretty good. Now, before we put the paneling on the side of this and on the top, I think we should work on figuring out how we're running the coolant lines in the chain tunnel. So before we completely panel this thing, let's work on that. Now, I've been thinking about it, and the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm realizing I don't think it'd be smart to run just normal radiator hose in this chain tunnel. We would have to really properly secure it to make sure that it's not going to be moving around and rubbing against a chain, or if this chain snaps, we don't want it taken out the radiator hose. And then I thought of, like, what if I added a wall in between the chain and the coolant lines in here, but then looking at this, it'd be a little difficult. I think a better option would be to use just steel tubing as radiator hose. And I've been playing around with these. These are like perfect size to use for the radiator hose that we have to use. And I've been playing around with it to make sure it will actually work and we can actually get tubing to fit in here. Now, unfortunately, I do have to do 2 separate pieces because I do have to have a bend on this end and that end down there, and there's no physical way to actually snake a long piece of tubing in here with a couple bends in it. So we do have to do it in 2 separate pieces, and we'll just connect it using radiator hose. But I think this is going to be a much better, safer option. There's no way the chain can damage this in case it snaps, and we can secure this in the frame a lot easier and make sure it's not going to be moving around or anything like that. Alright, it is really cramped in here, but I was able to squeeze this in here. It's really close to this, it's close to everything. I mean, this thing is so compact. It was a miracle that I could get this even in here. So this is the top one is going to be hot. This one's going to the radiator. The bottom one is the return. So this one should be a little bit colder, hopefully, in theory. And these are nice and solid in here. This stuff just doesn't want to go on any further. Yeah, somehow I was able to pull this off. I was a little skeptical that I was going to be able to make this work because it's really tricky getting the tubing to fit into here, especially have two of them and have clearance for everything. Now, I'm really hoping this setup works. Hopefully we don't have any issues with this, you know, heating up the chain tunnel or heating up the chain too hot or having issues. I don't know. I'm trying to think. How could this fail? How could this have problems? Aside from leaking or heating up the chain tunnel too hot, I don't really see a way that this could fail. So hopefully this setup works. Now, how I decided to attach this to the frame, because I was originally thinking of what if I just weld it in place, but then I'm like, well, it'd probably be smart to be able to remove this stuff. So I decided to take a bunch of half-cut pieces of tubing, put it over the pipe, and then weld this to the frame, and then I'm using hose clamps to attach this to that. And it seems pretty solid in there. It's not moving around. It's, yeah, nice and solid in there, and hopefully we can still remove it. So it was a bit tricky to get it in place, but now that we have all this stuff sticking out, hopefully it's, you know, hopefully we can still remove this out of the frame. So now I did run out of hose clamps, so I need to run to Lowe's to get more, because I need some for this, as well as the whole back section needs hose clamps to finish this up. But until I go to Lowe's and get those, I think let's put the paneling back on and move on with something else. I like how when you put the paneling on, it doesn't look like a chaotic mess anymore. It looks way cleaner, which is, I guess, the whole point of having panels. Alright, so I was going to do the paneling around the shifters, but I'll save that for the next video of this project. Now, I'm really hoping that this coolant setup will work on this project. I'm trying to think of any issues that we could have. Like maybe it'll heat up the chain tunnel super hot and it'll heat up the chain in there, or maybe it's going to move around. I don't know. Is the pipe going to expand a little bit while heating up and move? Or that's why I did the clamping the way I did, so it can kind of move around a little bit if it does, you know, expand a little bit when heating up. Also, I'm really wondering, do we need an external electric coolant pump? Because let's be honest, it's kind of a long distance between the engine and the radiator for the stock coolant pump on this engine. And but then if you think about it, well, the engine and the radiator are at the same level, so it's not like the fluid has to move. Yes, it has to move fluid a long distance, but it's a level long distance. It's not like it's having to lift it until we start climbing a hill. Then the coolant pump is going to have to be pumping coolant, you know, high up into the radiator, but then it's also the coolant's coming back down because it's going both ways. So then does that make it easier for the pump if the coolant is getting pumped up but it's also coming back down because it's an enclosed loop? Does that make it to where the pump doesn't have? I don't know. I don't know anything about fluid mechanics, so I'm going to test this setup first without a coolant pump, an external electric coolant pump first, just to see if it works. You know, I'll put this thing on a hill, I'll measure how much fluid is moving and everything, and make sure that it's still getting fluid movement in a hill at idle or certain RPMs, just to make sure we don't have any issues. And if we do have issues, I can always just install an external electric coolant pump later to hopefully fix those issues. But for now, let's try it without it, just to see if it'll work. Now, anyway, next video of this project, we get to install the headers and mufflers. We need to hook up the brakes, the hydraulic brake line for the clutch, get the clutch working, as well as finalizing a bunch of other stuff here and there. But guys, that's it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video.